there is a incredible online opportunity that I want to offer and speak to you about called DIP Lite, and it is a free online course at Desteni. And just to qualify, I have been taking the Desteni iProcess Pro course for about a year and a half, and it has completely changed my life. I feel very confident, stable, making that statement. I had completely separated myself from myself and from my world. Unaware, really. I mean, I know what desperation is, so I knew that. And I did this through the act of thinking. I didn't know that I did it through the act of thinking. I made a couple of notes, so I'm just looking at that. What have I realized about my relationship to thoughts? Well, I've realized a lot of things. Predominantly that I'm not a conglomeration of memories. I am not a conglomeration of pictures in my head. I am not a conglomeration of reactions, as in personalities. I have created many personalities within the story of Sandy. I am not a bunch of reactions. I'm not just fear. So what the fuck am I then? Well, I am walking a process finding that out, one breath at a time, one moment at a time, by remaining here. So now my world is completely different from the moment I wake up till I go to bed at night. Because I do not live. I mean, it's a process. I'm saying this to make a point and explain it is a process. I am in a process of living this each moment. I am not there yet. However, more and more aware. So now, in my each moment here, not inside my head, I come from the starting point, a completely different starting point. So no longer the story of Sandy with all the baggage. Doesn't mean that I don't know what my life is. Of course I do. But I come from the starting point of breath, of realization. I'm looking at my notes again. Of writing. Every day I do a writing, which you could think of as a journaling, facing myself point by point. For example, I had a terrible reaction to my husband and his friend the other day at dinner. I write that out. What's going on there? I come from the starting point of common sense. Simplifies things completely. Common sense and physical. So if there is a issue, it's like, well, I can give you an example. Here's a perfect example. Before, there was an issue with my stepdaughter didn't want to switch rooms with my son. I would go into all sorts of history in my mind about that. Painful. And lots of emotions would come up. And anger and resentment and fight. Horrible. Chains of the past. And now I realize I'm not that. I don't have to be that. I know what I've experienced in the past. I don't have to be that. Here. Let's look at this situation in the physical. And when I did that, common sense said, okay, well, in this case, she's actually not here, and the other person, my son, is here. She's here 10% of the time of the year, and he's here 90% of the time of the year. Okay, let's look at another fact. We just looked at the facts, and it was like, no, makes sense. They should switch rooms. Cool. Made her room, the other one, awesome for her. Everything's cool now. But I would have really tortured myself over that. And so it's one example. So coming from the starting point of common sense, and coming from the starting point of the physical alignment. So I stop myself often. If I start feeling that anxiety and I find that I was lost, it's like it's like, oh shit. And inside my head, I've been using my imagination for the last 5 minutes. And I bring myself back and use my breath to align myself, so I, get rid of those feelings, the stress, the anxiety, the worry. I identify it. I name it. And I apply self-forgiveness. I forgive myself for becoming the sister worrier. I feel worried about my sister. I label it. That's just one simple example. And I breathe, and I let it all go. And I remind myself, nothing I can do. Like, me worrying about this is not going to change it. It is not going to change it. And so I correct my body. I correct my thinking and stuff. And then I can even say it out loud. Learn to become the living word here, not through fantasy and imagination and hope of maybe there's some great guy in the sky who's going to make things better. I would like to make things better here now, for myself first, and then for my world at large, where my mind is sane. So anyway, back to my correction and coming from the starting point of physical alignment and physical expression. I would express that. What is it that I want? Well, I can just, I speak it. My sister's going to be fine. I leave it at that. I remind myself, if that thought comes up again, just stop and breathe. My sister's going to be fine. I'm not saying it's like magic and then my sister's fine. That is what my responsibility is. To control my thinking and correct myself and not live as fear, as spite. Anyway, these are some of the things that I've learned and that you would begin to learn in the DIP Lite course. I'm afraid I've gone on too long. Okay. I'll put that in below.